NFL free agency has kicked off, and a lot of moves have already happened. I'm recording this on day 2 of the official free agency period, but I'm going to go ahead and look at the overview of what each team has done and my thoughts about the biggest moves that have happened so far. I'm going to be using this article by Tyler Sullivan. I think that's how you say his name. I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can check it out for yourselves, but this is the most up-to-date overview I have found. There are some moves that have happened in the past 8 hours since he posted this, so hopefully I remember to actually tell that, but I am recording this on Tuesday at 4:37. So if another move happens, just know that it hasn't happened when I'm recording this episode. But if something happens mid-podcast, my phone is on, so I'll be able to let you guys know and let you know the thoughts of it. The first thing we have is the Arizona Cardinals. Their key acquisition was getting Josh Sweat from the Eagles. And from what I remember, the contract is not very significant. Now, Josh Sweat is not a Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 pass rusher, in my opinion. But he can get you from anywhere from 9 to 10 sacks a year if you have the pieces around him. So I think that was a decent addition for them. And these other players I really don't know much about, but getting Josh Sweat was honestly one of the best free agency moves because this free agency class obviously wasn't very star-studded. But they still have moves they can make, and their season's basically going to be dependent on if Kyler Murray stays consistent, which has been the issue for him. The next team is my team, the Atlanta Falcons. We've made no moves beside cutting and getting rid of everybody. This is obviously because we paid a quarterback $45 million to hold a clipboard this year and literally does not have a leg and an Achilles right now. So great job, Atlanta, for that one. And from what it looks like, the Falcons are not going to cut him, so we're just going to hold on to that salary because if we did cut him, we'd have so much dead cap money. But we restructured Jake Matthews. Now, Jake Matthews is a very good left tackle, but he's not, like I said with Josh Sweat, one of the above-tier tackles. Drew Dalman is a very key loss for us. He was our center last year, and he was very good. That's a great pickup for the Bears. And we cut Grady Jarrett, which really sucks. He's been with our team for, 10 or 11 years, and he's been one of the only bright spots of our D-line for years on years. We're definitely going to have to address that in the draft, or maybe more in free agency. I assume Kyle Pitts is going to get traded, but I don't know about that. But Michael Penix, you're going to have to carry us, and 95% sure we're going to fire our head coach in about a year because I don't think he knows what a timeout is. But anyway, next thing we have is the Baltimore Ravens. They haven't really done anything beside re-sign Ronnie Stanley, who is one of the better left tackles in the league. They did lose one of their more versatile offensive linemen because I've seen Patrick, I don't know how to say his name, but I've seen him play center sometimes. He's played guard. I think he's actually played tackle a few times too. So he's played all over. Brandon Stevens, I think, was a borderline Pro Bowler at 1 year, so that's also a big loss. But they couldn't afford him, obviously. But when you have Lamar Jackson, you'll be fine. Now, is Mark Andrews going to stay on the team? That's a bigger question and could get solved in a few days. But the Ravens are fine. But the only issue would be if Derrick Henry regresses. But beside that, in the draft, probably need to up that defense even more. Maybe get an offensive lineman since he lost some. And also, you can always give Lamar Jackson more weapons if he needs it. And next we have a McDonald's ad. Just kidding. Ads are going to pop up because this is not my website. I'm not going to pay for it. So there's the McDonald's ad. But the actual next team we have is Buffalo Bills. Haven't really done too much. They signed Joshua Palmer. He's an ant receiver. They did re-sign Josh Allen to a very good contract, 6 years, $333 million. If I did my math correctly, I think that's $55 million per year, which would make him tied with second for the highest paid quarterback in the league, which is really good for somebody of Josh Allen's caliber and coming off of an MVP season, which Dak Prescott makes $5 more million than Josh Allen, which is insane. So he obviously took a team-friendly deal, so kudos to him. I'm not even going to try to say this last name, but they re-signed their edge, Greg. Pro Bowler edge threat. I think he was around the 10-sack mark as well, and that was a big key for them in their defense. Shakir, they got him on a pretty decent contract. They lost Matt Collins, but his outfits, you didn't want him anyway. I'm kidding about that. But they obviously want Keon Coleman to take the next step last year, and their receivers, they do it by committee in Buffalo. When you have Josh Allen who can just elevate everybody around him, you really don't need him. But the Bills, they're going to be fine. They don't need to make super big moves or anything like that. The next thing we have is Carolina Panthers. They got a safety, Trayvon Moreg. I think that's how you say it. I remember him from Madden. That's really the only reason why I remember him. But they re-signed J.C. Horn to a decently expensive contract. I didn't know he was going to be worth that much, but shout out to him for getting that much. Bryce Young, towards the end of the season, looked like a above-average quarterback, which was really good for his development, and hopefully he could take the next step because I am cheering for Bryce Young. Even though he is a division rival, I still like Bryce Young and everything he stands for. So the Panthers, they're obviously not going to be contenders, but they are on the right step, and hopefully they can have a good draft, and Bryce Young can continue to elevate his play, and Leggett can also bond with Bryce Young some more, but you got to fix that offensive line and defense in the draft. Next team we have is the Chicago Bears. It's almost like the Chicago Bears don't have salary cap. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown actually said that too, how they're just signing everybody left and right to like high expensive contracts. But I think Caleb Williams was sacked, 60, this is right here, 68 sacks last year. Most in the NFL, and they just got Jonathan Jackson, who was a Pro Bowler at one point, Joe Tooney, who I don't know why the Chiefs got rid of him. He's one of their better offensive linemen. I guess they couldn't afford him. And they also picked up Grady Jarrett and Drew Dalman, both Falcons. Of course, they're great players, so we just can't afford them because we make stupid decisions. But they obviously knew their weakness was protecting Caleb Williams. He's taking way too many sacks, and they addressed it. And Ben Johnson looks like he knows what he's doing, and he knows the players that he wants. I'm very interested to see who they get into the draft, and hopefully Caleb Williams could take that next step. And Caleb Williams, once again, should have a lot of pieces around him. Next team we have is the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know what the Bengals are doing at all. They have money, and they're not paying like anybody. Continuously wait to the very last minute to pay people, which drives up the price, because if you would have paid Jamar Chase a year or two ago, you could have gotten him at $30 million, $32 million per year. And now Jamar Chase is going to want to be the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And Myles Garrett just got $40 million per year. So guess what? Jamar Chase is probably going to ask for 42. And you also still haven't addressed T. Higgins. You franchise tagged him for the second straight year. I don't really know what you're doing. I don't know if they just don't want to spend money at all. I know they have a reputation of doing that, but it's just puzzling to me. They did get B.J. Hill, and they did re-sign Mike Gesicki, but they did lose Alex Kappa, who was one of their better offensive linemen, and Sam Hubbard retired for some reason, and they're probably going to lose Trey Hendrickson unless they give him a rich, expensive deal. So I'm interested to see on that. Maybe they want Kyle Pitts. I know that's been the rumors. You can have Kyle Pitts. I do not want Kyle Pitts for a second. Their defense still needs a lot of help because their defense was not very good, especially at the beginning of the season, even though at the end of the season they kind of picked it up a little bit. But they still need help on that side of the ball. And Joe Burrow is not going to be very happy if you just let all of his talent leave. Like you already let Jesse Bates go, and who knows what's next. Maybe T. Higgins goes straight in the next couple of days because you can't work out a deal. So I'm very interested to see about the Bengals. You better start paying people and start handing that bread out, if you know what I mean. Next thing we have is the Cleveland Browns. Their big acquisition was Kenny Pickett. Why? Not really sure. I'm assuming they're going to take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Maybe. I don't know. The mock drafts have been all over the place, so I don't really know at this point. But they re-signed Myles Garrett after he demanded a trade. Now he wants to be back because they made him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. But that entire roster is not going to be happy unless you fix that quarterback situation, because Deshaun Watson's not the answer. He's nowhere near the player he was when he was with the Texans. He was neck and neck with Patrick Mahomes for a second there, but he's just lost it. The example I used a couple episodes ago with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl with the Space Jam ball, that's basically what happened Deshaun Watson, and he still hasn't gotten his talent back. He just looks like a terrible player and one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, if you can imagine that. But I'm very interested to see what the Cleveland Browns do in the draft. Obviously, keeping Myles Garrett is a very big key, and they have talent on their roster. They just got to figure out the quarterback position. The next thing we have is the Dallas Cowboys. Once again, I think Jerry Jones was sleeping during the first day of the free agency period because they didn't do anything. They got Javonte Williams, and Javonte Williams is a big name if this was 3 years ago when he still had knees. They re-signed, I don't even want to try to say that name, Osa. I'm going to say that. Very good pass rusher coming from the interior, which is very valuable in the NFL. And they also re-signed these guys, but they're not very notable in my opinion. They lost Lewis, their corner. but they still have Bland and Diggs, so they'll be fine with the corners. Now, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb both restructured their deals, but Jerry Jones ain't going to spend nothing. They still have to pay Micah Parsons, and I don't know why they didn't pay him a year ago or haven't paid him in the next 5 seconds, because he obviously needs to be paid because the price just keeps going up and up and up almost every single day. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Micah Parsons, I still see the talent, and he needs to be paid, and he wants a pretty penny. So the Cowboys are pretty much going to be what they were last year because they're not going to make any moves. They'll probably draft, Ashton Genty with their pick, and so they can finally fix their running back situation. And the Cowboys fans will probably be like, yeah, we're going to the Super Bowl. Hate to tell you, you're not. Your roster is very flawed, and you still need offensive linemen. Your linebackers are still not great. And Jerry Jones just hired a head coach just to be his puppet so he can absolutely control him. And they're just doing what the Cowboys do at this point. Next, we have the Denver Broncos. Their big addition was Hufanga. Hasn't played at his Pro Bowl level in like 2 years due to injury. So if he can get back to that, that's a huge pickup for them. And the rest of their free agency so far, they re-signed Jared Stidham. I mean, I guess that's news. The only reason I really know him is because of he played at Auburn, and I'm pretty sure he was on that team that beat us the regular season, and we ended up beating him in the SEC championship, if I remember correctly. But Bo Nix is the future. You want to get more weapons for him. You want to protect him. The defense was pretty decent throughout the entire year, but Sean Payton's a very good coach, and I'm sure that they're going to have a good draft, and they're going to fill their roster out. But the problem is they're competing against the Kansas City Chiefs in their division, so that's always going to be tough. But the Broncos really haven't done anything significant or major. Next thing we have is the Detroit Lions getting DJ Reed from the Jets, I believe, if I remember correctly. Very good signing. He's a good player. As far as the money goes, not really sure, but the Lions have a very young roster, so they can actually afford to go and spend some money. I thought they were going to get Myles Garrett at one point, but I guess that ship has sailed because obviously I don't think now they can afford him, and I don't think Myles Garrett's going to go anywhere. Keeping Marcus Davenport, very good move. You had to release Zadarius Smith, but I mean, he's getting older and up there in age. Carlton Davis leaving, but you just got DJ Reed. The big thing for the Lions is, are they going to be able to survive losing both coordinators? Because we saw what happened to the Eagles a couple years ago when they lost their coordinators. They completely fell apart during the second half of the season, and play calling was a huge issue for them. So I'm very interested to see on that, but I'm sure the Dan Campbell culture and the talent that they have can still make them a playoff team, obviously. Are they going to compete for a championship now? I don't really know. I need to see how the coordinators work out. But the Lions will still be a physical, bruising team, and you definitely do not want to play them. Next team we have is the Green Bay Packers. I would love to say some stuff about the Green Bay Packers, but they really haven't done anything besides getting Aaron Banks, who is a solid offensive lineman. I think it says right here he's only given up 1 sack in 900 pass blocking snaps, which is incredible. It's always great to protect your franchise quarterback, which you obviously have one, Jordan Love. Now, he did have a turnover problem near the end of that year, which I did not love, and I did not see the improvement that I wanted to see, but I'm sure he'll bounce back. They do need a bona fide number 1 receiver, so maybe they get that in the draft. Maybe they trade for somebody. I don't really know. Maybe T. Higgins, if he's available, or I still think A.J. Brown could be available, in my opinion. But Packers really haven't done anything to note, and I'm obviously expecting more moves to come with them. Next team we have is the Houston Texans. Now, they got Christian Kirk. He's not great in my opinion. I don't know why, but they got rid of Laremy Tunsil for some reason. He's one of the better offensive tackles in the league, so I'm not really sure on that one when their biggest need was offensive line and protecting C.J. Stroud. So I think another move is coming, and they're going to try to spend the money on offensive linemen. I don't know what they're going to do because they have to protect C.J. Stroud because he was under duress way too many times last year. So this pretty much confirms that they're not bringing back Stephon Diggs because they got Christian Kirk and I guess Braxton Berrios. But I also forgot that this is not on here. I'm pretty sure C.J. Gardner-Johnson was traded to the Texans. C.J. Gardner-Johnson's a very good player, even though he has some antics and he is a wild card at times. But he is very good, and that should help their defense out, but they got to find a way to protect C.J. Stroud. Next thing we have is the Colts. I do remember that they just signed Daniel Jones to a 1-year, $14 million contract, which is just so they can give Anthony Richardson some quarterback competition to see what he's actually made of and see if he can progress and show the potential that he obviously has. But if you watch him at Florida, you know he's a very flawed and not a good quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to be a good quarterback, and they're probably going to be looking at Arch Manning next year, in my opinion. Now, they reached Braden Smith, good tackle. They lost their center, Ryan Kelly, to the Vikings, I guess. I didn't know he went to the Vikings, but I knew they lost him. Above average center, so that's going to be a big loss. But the big news is Anthony Richardson has got to show some improvement because he may complete like an 80-yard bomb, and it's one of the best throws you've ever seen. But look at his stats, and he's 2 for 14. I mean, that's just got to change, and he's got to stay healthy, so that's going to be the big issue with the Colts. Next thing we have is the Jaguars. They got the offensive lineman from the Ravens, very versatile. Patrick, he can play on all 5 positions. They got Lewis, the corner from the Cowboys, and the other 2 I'm not very familiar with. They did let Christian Kirk go, but their big issue is they're paying Trevor Lawrence so much money right now, and he's not elevating, and he had a very down year last year, so hopefully he can get back to what he was doing, not last season, but the last season, because he looked good, especially during the second half of that season, and that's really all the Jaguars need to focus on, in my opinion. Next team we have is Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know their cap situation, but they let Joe Thuney go with the trade with the Bears. I guess they fixed their offensive line situation at their tackle position with Jalon Moore, but I don't know much about him, so I can't really say anything about him. Nick Bolton was a very underrated re-signing, and it's very huge that they got that. They franchise tagged Trey Smith, who is one of, if not the best guards in all of football. They got Hollywood Brown, $11 million contract. I may be wrong on that, but it's a very good deal for Hollywood Brown. Hopefully he stays healthy this season. The Chiefs just had a blowout loss in the Super Bowl and embarrassed. Travis Kelce's coming back, so that's a huge win for them for some veteran experience. But when you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, you're going to be fine. And I'm sure they're going to find some pieces in the draft, and they're going to be just where they were last year. And I just got an ESPN alert that the Falcons are projected to get Leonard Floyd from the 49ers, who just got released. So maybe the Falcons are changing their ways about Georgia players, and we're actually going to draft Jalen Walker or Mikael Williams or Malachi Starks. Please, they're really good. Please just draft one of them. Next team is the Raiders. They just got Geno Smith from a trade with the Seahawks, which I was not expecting. Geno Smith is an average to an above average quarterback, and they will get some good quarterback play out of him, which getting Geno Smith, maybe he's a mentor, but I think that means that they're not going to draft a quarterback unless Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward somehow falls in the draft and slips down to the Raiders pick. Maybe that could happen, but I don't really know. Getting Jeremy Chin, Alex Kappa, very good acquisitions right there. They re-signed Max Crosby to a huge deal, which Max Crosby is a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL, so very good signing on that part. They did lose Trayvon, but they got Jeremy Chin to replace him, so they're good. Their big deal is going to be what they're going to do in the draft because they've been rumored to get Shedeur Sanders for a while now, so I'm very interested to see on that part. But once again, they're in a division with the Chiefs, so you're going to have to be very good if you're going to want to actually make the playoffs in that division. Next team is the Chargers. Now, they just got Dante Jackson, very fast corner. I remember him from Madden, very good corner. But as far as play on the field, he's They did re-sign Khalil Mack, which I don't remember it being too expensive, so that's pretty good. They had to release Joey Bosa. Their big issue was they were way over the cap last year, so Jim Harbaugh is still making that roster and trying to figure things out. But they have their quarterback in Herbert. Now, he does need to win immediately. I don't know what's going on with him in the playoffs. He's just choking. But Jim Harbaugh is a great coach. And Lat McConkey was a lot better than I actually thought he would be. So they have the receiver 1, and they're going to be fine. I give it maybe 1 or 2 more years, and the Chargers are going to be a team to deal with in the next few years. And I'm sure they're going to have a really good draft as well. And they're also heavily rumored to get Najee Harris, which Jim Harbaugh loves to run the ball. So that'd be a great acquisition to him to take some pressure off of Justin Herbert as well. Next thing we have is the Rams, who have had a big offseason. Now they re-signed Matthew Stafford, like I mentioned last episode, but now they also signed Devontae Adams, which he is still a very good player and a very good receiver. And with Matthew Stafford, that's going to be very good, especially alongside Puka Nacua. That's very good, especially with Matthew Stafford and Kyron Williams still in the backfield. And their defense looked really good, and Verse was a standout last year, and he should take a big jump next year, hopefully. And the Rams may be my Super Bowl pick to come out of the NFC, but obviously it's too early to tell on that one. Now, they did lose Jonathan Jackson. He is a former Pro Bowler, But they can find an offensive lineman in the draft, and I trust Sean McVay and his coaching, his talent evaluation, so they'll be fine. Now, the Miami Dolphins, they got Zach Wilson. I don't know how Zach Wilson's still getting contracts, but he somehow got paid, and that's really the only thing they've done. I don't know if Tyreek Hill still wants to be there or not. Very interested to see on that one, but Dolphins really haven't done anything. Next thing we have is the Minnesota Vikings. If you were looking at the right of your screen, Jonathan Allen just signed a 3-year, $60 million. Very good interior lineman, and he should be a very good addition to that defense. They did re-sign Aaron Jones, and they got rid of Sam Darnold, which is a very good thing. I'll talk about with the Seahawks. Paying him that amount of money is just going to penalize your team and just destroy your team as far as cap space goes and trying to get weapons around him. And now they're moving forward with J.J. McCarthy, which is very good. Even though I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to be that great in the NFL, you do need to figure out if he's actually the guy, because next year's quarterback class, from what I hear, is going to be very good. But with the weapons that the Vikings have with Justin Jefferson and Addison, Aaron Jones, and T.J. Hawkinson, and with the Kevin O'Connell system, J.J. McCarthy should look very good, just like Sam Darnold did last year. So I know this says D, which I don't agree with. This is obviously before that, but I think the Vikings are actually moving in a good direction. Next thing we have is the New England Patriots. Now, their big acquisition, and from what everybody and everything I looked at is saying, they have won the offseason because they got Milton Williams. I didn't think Milton Williams was overly great with the Eagles. I think most of it was just because their D lineman was really, really good, and Milton was just benefiting from that, but maybe he's actually a stud, and I just haven't watched enough of him play, even though I watch the Eagles almost every week. They got Carlton Davis as well, Harold Landry. He used to be a stud, but now I don't really know what he really is anymore. I don't remember him much. They did re-sign Austin Hooper, former Falcon. It's better than Kyle Pitts, but they lost Davon to the Saints, I guess. I actually didn't know this one, but the Patriots with Drake May, they're obviously trying to surround him with some talent, and now they obviously have Mike Vrabel now at head coach, so he's going to try to lay a foundation and create a culture, and I think they have their quarterback from what Drake May has shown last year, but they just need to get talent around him. I assume they're going to try to get Travis Hunter, but I'm not really sure. I'm very interested to see what the Patriots are in the next few years. Next thing we have is the Saints. They just got Davon from the Patriots, which I did not know. They re-signed Nathan Shepard. Cool. They also lost Adebio. That's not how you say that name. I don't really know, but really haven't done anything. I guess they think Spencer Rattler's going to be a franchise quarterback. Don't really know, but they're still paying Derek Carr a lot of money, if I'm not mistaken, and I think they're still way over the cap. So I wonder if Chris Olave is going to demand a trade or one out of there soon. I assume he is, so we'll see on that one. Next thing we have is the New York Giants. They re-signed Tommy DeVito, and when you do that, you should be an A+, not a C+, so that's bogus in my opinion. But anyway, again, on a serious note, they also re-signed Darius Slayton, and I saw something that said that they declined what Saquon Barkley was wanting, and then they gave a similar contract to Darius Slayton. I think they're actually paying Darius Slayton more money. So great job, Giants. You're running a great organization. They're obviously going to try to get a quarterback in the draft because Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock is not the answer. Now, Aaron Rodgers is reportedly being looked at to go to the Giants. I think that is a terrible move, in my opinion. I don't think any team should get Aaron Rodgers and would want all the baggage that he comes with. So I would absolutely stay away from that, and I would draft a quarterback because even with Aaron Rodgers, you're not competing next year. You don't have a team to do it. Now, the only thing you really have that's promising is Malik Neighbors and Dexter Lawrence. But if you draft a quarterback and just develop your team, maybe you can win a few games next year. But I don't expect the Giants to make a big move. And even if they do make a big move, like a Aaron Rodgers would be, that's still not going to matter, really, in my opinion. Now, the next thing we have is the New York Jets. Now, they have had a very good offseason, in my opinion. They got rid of their head coach, and they got rid of all their poison in their locker room in Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Hassan Reddick. Now, Aaron Glenn is going to try to establish his culture in the Jets, and I think they got a bargain and a steal with Justin Fields. I think he has a lot more in the tank, And from what he looked like with the Steelers, I think he looked very good, and he wasn't turning the ball over. So I still love Justin Fields. And they still have talent around them, obviously. So I think the Jets have had a very good offseason, in my opinion, and I'm very interested to see what they do next season. And they're probably going to be my Madden team to play with and rebuild with because I really like Justin Fields. So, yeah. Next thing we have is defending Super Bowl champions in the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, they just extended Saquon Barkley, which is very good, and they retained Zach Bond, who was the Defensive Player of the Year candidate last year, so very good. They traded away Kenny Pickett, but they got Dorian Thomas-Robinson from the Browns to play their backup quarterback. He's obviously not going to play unless something happens to Jalen Hurts. They lost Josh Sweat and Milton Williams and Isaiah Rodgers and C.J. Gardner-Johnson now, which C.J. Gardner-Johnson is a very big loss. But their young players should be fine, and they have Howie Roseman. And Howie Roseman is a genius and a mastermind, and he's going to somehow crush this offseason, probably sign a player who's not even on here, and he's going to end up turning into an all-pro probably. And I'm calling it right now, since they got rid of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Howie's going to find a way to get Malachi Starks. And I'm going to officially become an Eagles fan, and I'm going to cheer for them and watch them literally every single week. The next team we have is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, they traded for DK Metcalf, and they also extended him for a boatload of money. But they still don't have an answer at quarterback. Now, Aaron Rodgers is heavily rumored to go to the Steelers, but I do not think they need to move in that direction. I think they need to just face it that they're not going to be very good next year, and they don't have talent offensively, and they need to get a young quarterback and just develop him. I thought that quarterback would be Justin Fields, and I thought they would move on with him, but he obviously signed with the Jets now. So I'm very interested to see what they do. If they get Aaron Rodgers or bring back Russell Wilson, I know that's not going to be the answer. And I know Mike Tomlin doesn't want to lose that losing season streak, but they may have to so then they can get a good quarterback. Next thing we have is the San Francisco 49ers. Now, they got rid of Debo, like I talked about last episode, Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore, Hufanga, and they just cut Kyle Juszczyk, which is very sad, and I don't know why they cut him. I really like him. Now, they did sign Trey Tomlinson and Luke Farrell, I guess, but they're running into a cap situation. They're paying a lot of guys, and they're losing a lot of talent. So their days of competing for a Super Bowl are pretty much zero at this point. Maybe next year with their top-end talent, they can make some noise and be a scary team, but they're also going to have to pay Brock Purdy next year or maybe this year in this offseason. So that's going to be a pretty penny. So we'll see what the San Francisco 49ers are doing, but they're obviously tearing down the roster because they have to. Now, the next team is the Seahawks. Now, they were making headlines left and right and very early because they traded away Geno Smith. They released Tyler Lockett. They traded DK Metcalf. So they're blowing it up, and I thought they were like, okay, we're not going to be mediocre because the worst thing to be in sports is mediocre because you don't get a good draft pick and you're just in the middle of the pack every year. So I thought that was the direction they were going in. I was like, yeah, I kind of agree because you don't have the overall talent to compete for a Super Bowl, so might as well blow it up. But then they go ahead and spend a lot of money on Sam Darnold, which I don't understand for a second because Sam Darnold, in my opinion, benefited from the Kevin O'Connell system and from having a boatload of weapons, especially Justin Jefferson. I think that's the only reason why he looked like a competent quarterback now. Can he be an average quarterback? Yes. Can he look like an above-average quarterback for a second? Yes. But is he worth the type of money? Because I think it was, $36 million a year, something like that. I hate that. I do not like what the Seahawks did. I think this B is stupid. I'll rank the teams probably later in a later episode, but I think they had a very bad offseason. Next team is the Buccaneers. Now, their big acquisition was Hassan Reddick. I don't really know about Hassan Reddick because most of the year he really didn't play because he was holding out, which is confusing. Now, they did get Chris Godwin, and it wasn't a very bad deal, which is actually a bargain in my opinion, but they really didn't do anything of much. And they're still probably better than the Falcons because the Falcons refuse to do anything, and we don't know how to call timeouts. So I wouldn't be shocked if they won the division again because Baker Mayfield somehow is still a great quarterback, and you know for sure Mike Evans is going to get 1,000 yards somehow. Next thing we have is the Tennessee Titans. Now, they have the number 1 pick. I'm obviously assuming they're going to take Cam Ward. I think that's who I would take because I don't think you can go with Will Levis for any longer in his silliness. But they lost Harold Landry, but I haven't heard from him in so long, so I obviously think that he hasn't been very productive, but I also don't watch many Tennessee Titans games, if I'm being fair. So their big news is going to be what they do in the draft, because this roster is not very talented and they have a question to head coach, and they need Cam Ward. If and when they draft Cam Ward, is he going to have weapons around him to actually be successful? Probably not, so we'll see how that goes. And the very last team we have is the Washington Commanders. Now, I talked about them for a while last episode with a Deebo Samuel trade, but they just got Laremy Tunsil. I didn't know he was available. I don't know why the Texans did it, but that is huge for them because you need to protect Jaden Daniels at all costs, and they did exactly that. And they got Javon Kinlaw, who I think was a very underrated signing in my opinion. They re-signed Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz, so two veterans who are still pretty good. Now, they did lose Chin, and they lost Damani Brown, so I guess they're banking on Deebo Samuel being healthy for the season, but I expected them to draft a receiver in the draft. They obviously had a good offseason. I don't love the Deebo Samuel move, but getting Laremy Tunsil was a huge acquisition in protecting Jaden Daniels, and the Commanders are not going to be Super Bowl contenders probably next year, but they're on the bubble, and they could be a very scary team. Because when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, you're going to be scary. You can almost beat anybody, and I'm assuming that he's going to be one of the heavy favorites for the MVP next year. Now, could he have a sophomore slump like C.J. Stroud did? Maybe we'll have to see on that one. But Jaden Daniels, I believe, is just one of them ones, and he's going to be very good. And that's going to be the end of this episode. Next episode, I should be individually grading every NFL offseason from the first week and so on. So be in tune for that. If you enjoyed this video, please give this video a like and subscribe. The offer is still out there. Once we hit 50 subscribers, I am going to be having a special guest. So if you want to listen to somebody else and not just me, make sure you subscribe and get me to 50 subscribers. Make sure you leave your comments on anything you have to say to me or about the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.